Lee Anderson.
Good grief.
Go on, Lee Anderson. Should we bring back hanging? Apparently it's what normal people are thinking about. You used to work for the Labour Party until fairly recently.
Lee Anderson is a great example of what is wrong with the Conservative Party and Rishi Sunak's weakness.
What we thought we'd do is we'd do a word association game just to get your views on things.
What have I let myself in for? We're supposed to start by saying blur, by the way.
Yeah, look at the camera and say blur.
Blur.
Look at that camera and say blur.
Blur.
There we are. Very good. Right, so I'm going to give you a word and you just tell me the first thing that pops into your head.
Right.
Right, you ready?
This is dangerous, yeah.
Okay, Eurovision.
Fun.
Very good. Electric cars.
Green.
Madonna.
Spectacular.
Fawlty Towers.
Comedy.
GP's receptionist.
Lovely.
You know better than
My stepmum's a GP's
is she?
receptionist, yeah, so
Oh, you've
no
got to say that.
no alternative there.
Lee Anderson.
Good grief.
Go on, Lee Anderson. Should we bring back hanging? Apparently it's what normal people are thinking about. You used to work for the Labour Party until fairly recently.
Lee Anderson is a great example of what is wrong with the Conservative Party and Rishi Sunak's weakness. I don't think for a minute that Rishi Sunak believes in the nonsense that comes out of Lee Anderson's mouth, but he has promoted him. Just as he promoted Suella Braverman, just as he promoted Dominic Raab, I think it is an appalling position to be in where the Prime Minister of our country appoints people to office that he knows are not up to the job because he's too weak to stand up for his own party. It is a total disgrace, and I just want to reassure decent, depressed Conservatives out there that there is a safe home in a serious political party led by Keir Starmer.
It's not very whack-a-day, but we take your point.
More than one word.
Here's another one then. Rishi Sunak.
Weak.
Tony Blair.
Winner.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Out.
Never to come back?
No.
Do you think it's an issue? It keeps being brought up at PMQs. You didn't serve for Jeremy Corbyn. You were very rude about Jeremy Corbyn. You stuck by your principles. Keir Starmer didn't.
I wouldn't say Keir didn't stick by his principles. I always found Keir to be someone that, particularly on anti-Semitism, which I was most exercised about, but also on other issues, he was someone I could go to and know he was on the right side, making the right arguments and trying his best to change things from within. I don't criticise him at all for that. I think we can see, contrast with what I've just said about Rishi Sunak, withdrawing the whip from a former leader of a political party is a huge deal, and I think an act of enormous strength and integrity. And the changes that Keir has led within the party on anti-Semitism have led up to all of the hopes and expectations of those of us who were desperate to see some light at the end of the tunnel. I
expect Rishi Sunak has thought about taking the whip off his immediate predecessor as Tory leader.
Oh, well, yesterday in Parliament, by the way, Boris was there in Westminster Hall.
Yeah.
My goodness, the stories I've heard about the running commentary and what Boris was saying about Rishi Sunak during, just a constant barrage of criticism. And I think to be fair to Boris, he's not been quiet about it. I think he's since tweeted basically saying, give Ukraine the aircraft and on Home Affairs questions on earlier this week, Boris was bobbing to come in on topical questions, surrounded by supporters, biggest cheer of the afternoon when he stood up. That is not a former Prime Minister who's gone away or thinks that his future at the top is over.
Go on then, we'll do one last word association. Liz Truss.
Kamikaze.
And there we are. That's the end of...
that was great.
Matt Chorley's Mallet's Mallet.
I feel like I've just ticked something off the bucket list now.
Can we go and raid... We need to go and raid the first aid kit and give you a plaster to put on your chin or something. Do you have to put your plaster on your elbow, Mallet?
Yeah, you got a little plaster and stuff.
Yeah.
But next time you get Timmy Mallet on, get him in the studio and let me come on, please. He came to my primary school once.
Did he?
I told him he was utterly, utterly bonkers, and it was one of the highlights of my childhood.
Wes, it's been lovely to see you. Thanks
for having me on.
Thank you for coming in. Take away that enormous bucket of hot chocolate.
I've drunk it now. That's why I'm in such a good mood now.
Absolutely wired. Sugar. Hard being a gay Anglican. Trying to weigh up those two aspects of your life to the point that you've now stopped going to church. Is that right?
Well, I've sort of started again. I always describe myself as a practicing Christian on the basis that I'm practicing and still not very good at it. But this goes back to when I was a teenager, really, and I went to a Church of England primary school. I chose to be baptised and confirmed, and my faith was and remains very important to me, and it was the single biggest thing that made it hard for me to accept myself and to come out as gay. And I think the church underestimates the harm that it does. It took me a long time to really reconcile my sort of theological view on this as well. I have come to the sort of view that being gay and being Christian are compatible, and I would love to see the Church of England adopt equal marriage. They've fallen short of that position. The General Synod, I think, as we speak, is having, which is effectively the Parliament of the Church of England. It gets its authority delegated from our actual Parliament, and they are debating as we speak a proposal to sort of bless people who are in a same-sex partnership.
But stopping short of actually having a marriage.
Yeah, and I think as well the fudge is so elegant that they've stopped short of actually blessing the relationship. They bless these two individuals who happen to be... And the prayer itself is beautiful. I plan to use it if that's what the church commits to today. But I think that... I think the church has still fallen short of where I would hope they would be.
It was interesting, the Archbishop of Canterbury yesterday, speaking to the Synod, said, I ask each member of the Synod to vote with their spirit-inspired consciences, scripturally and spiritually guided, and not because groups or lobbies or outsiders have told you to. I've heard him over the last 2 weeks in Parliament, talking about the debate he took part in, and being told exactly what to do. I'm not doing any of it. And sort of basically telling MPs to sort of butt out. What's your response to that?
Well, firstly, I have a lot of love and respect for the Archbishop of Canterbury. I think he is a wonderful man. I also respect that, for him and for the General Synod, this should be about what's right according to our faith and Christian convictions, and not about whether or not what we believe is kind of in vogue with wider society. And I also think he's entirely allowed and entitled to say, I'm the Archbishop of Canterbury, this is the General Synod, we decide church policy, thanks for your input, Parliament and everyone else, but we don't bend to you, we bow to God. I think that's a legitimate position for him to take. I think that, I've come to a kind of theological view and a Christian view that, I am made and other gay people are made in God's image, and that marriage and committed relationships is something that we should aspire for people to have in same-sex relationships. So that's my view. Other people in the church have a different view, and that's they're perfectly entitled to that. And I think the Archbishop of Canterbury is in a difficult position because on one hand, he is responsible for the Church of England, but he's also responsible for the global Anglican Communion, and he wants to hold it together. And I think that is a reasonable position for someone in his shoes to take.
Because
so I don't
other
pretend any of
countries are
this
at
is
different
easy.
places in terms of
Yeah, very
adopting.
much so, and it's very difficult. And there is a genuine risk the church will split. There are some people in the Church of England who say, well, look, this is just inevitable, allow the schism to happen. But he's in a difficult position.
The counter risk is that people like you stop going to church, and that other people, straight people as well, think, well, this isn't for me. This is so far. Other major institutions have had to move with the times.
Yeah, that is a risk. And I do think that it's one of the things that always makes me sad is whenever I've talked about being a Christian, the reaction I get on social media is a lot more hostile than I ever expected. It took me by surprise, actually.
From what direction?
I think a lot of not just cynicism about religion, but fear. And I think the problem we have is that often when people think about people in politics of faith, they don't think, about the way in which my faith might motivate my desire to tackle burning injustices of poverty and inequality and other things that, where my faith strongly influences my politics. They think that because I'm a Christian, will I then oppose a woman's right to choose? Will I then be socially conservative on other equalities issues? And actually, the answer to both of those questions is, actually, I'm very socially liberal and actually very secular in how I cast my vote in Parliament anyway. I don't believe in imposing our own religious views on others. But it saddens me that often, particularly in the LGBT plus community, when people hear religion or faith, their first thought is bigotry and prejudice.
Yeah.
And I think that's desperately sad. And that's my message to conservatives with a small c in the Anglican Church and actually in other faiths as well, is I think, I can certainly speak more for the Abrahamic faiths because they're the ones that I know best. But I think what's at the heart of our religion is actually about love. It's about acceptance. It's about not judging others. God judges, we don't. Where we should be motivated by compassion and reaching out to others. And I think too often what we get is the sort of fire and brimstone of the Old Testament and not the love and compassion of the New Testament.
Well, it's a fascinating debate, and like you said, we will keep across what's happening.
I've totally broken Alistair Campbell's missive of don't do God on this. I didn't expect to come and delivering sermons on a Thursday morning.
It's interesting, and it's it's something that lots of politicians don't talk about.